It's such a beautiful day to be surrounded by stories, words, and people who love both. Welcome to the English Book Depot, a place that has been home to readers. Today is extra special because we are not just talking about stories, we are meeting the mind behind them. I'm excited to welcome an author whose work gently explores emotions, relationships, and the quiet complexities of life. Please join me in welcoming Miss Nidhi Thakur, the author of When She Married Dr. Patekar. Thank you so much, ma'am, for being here with us today.
Thank you. Thank you so much to EBD and to you for having me here.
Okay. Before we dive into the book, I want to start with something close to home literally, as you told me that you are from Dehradun only and today you are at here at the English Book Depot. So how does it feel to be here? Like what made you choose this bookstore only for your visit, and do you have any memories of the bookstores like this growing up?
Absolutely. So, as you rightly pointed, I grew up in Dehradun. And as a matter of fact, I studied in a school very close to here. So, we passed by EBD almost on a daily basis. And as I grew older, we would come here first to buy some of our textbooks, but then as our understanding of literature and desire for books other than those prescribed in our syllabus grew, EBD became the second home for buying such books. I remember there being an auntie who used to sit here uh, back then. And then there were, the staff was always very helpful. They almost felt welcoming in helping us choose the books. I remember the quiz books were very popular here, the children's encyclopedias, and then, of course, the Enid Blytons and Agatha Christie's. If we wanted to gift books to our friends, we'd come here and buy. So certainly, English Book Depot was a, a place that felt like the library that we didn't have back then. And it is an honor and a privilege for me also to come back to EBD. So
Yeah,
thank you.
it's a memory for all of us. So, as we are talking about your book today, this beautiful book, and the cover itself feels like a story. So, this cover is so detailed and layered, and there's this like nature, architecture, a woman. So, like even an airplane window. So, can you tell us that the thought process behind this design?
Sure. So the book, as you can see, is called When She Married Dr. Patekar and Other Stories. It's a collection of short stories. And the central theme of these books is inspired by, a semi-autobiographical scenario, which is that, I moved to the United States after college. And so being an NRI is an important part of my identity, and at the same time the fact that I am in a foreign country now, but I come from India, and whatever is about me comes from my being in India and being an Indian first and foremost. And so the because the stories are inspired by my own NRI life and my experiences around that, the book had to be this. The cover had to be this. So my publisher and me, we went through a couple of designs, and we settled on this. They were talking to me, and I studied in Delhi also. So for me, Mughal architecture and everything Mughal is very something that I hold very dearly. There's a sense of romance around Mughal architecture and the paintings and so on. So they prescribed this, the Mughal motif that you see here, and I will take credit for the aeroplane window that you see. I said, while the Mughal architecture is the Indian part of me, the aeroplane window kind of talks about us flying away, the NRIs flying away, that experience, and so this was thus added to it. So in a nutshell, the cover is there to tell you that these are stories which are anchored in the Indian identity, but they're also talking about that Indian identity traveling abroad and how it navigates the foreign landscapes. So that's what it is about.
Yeah, that's very interesting. And moving from outside to what's inside the book. So, what would you say, like, are the central themes that connect all the stories in this collection? Like,
Yeah.
what are these stories about? Like, relationship, identity, or inner emotional journeys?
So all of those, and so I can I'm going to quickly read from the preface of the book that kind of explains why I wrote the book. So this is a book about a person flying away and then experiencing America. So this is largely based in America. And the book goes like this. The year was 1999. That first flight out of India was my first flight ever. I had never sat in an airplane until then, and the clasps of the seatbelt too were a mechanism for me. I quietly looked from the corner of my eye and observed how my co passengers fastened the belt, reclined the seat, and called for an attendant. I slept wearily and warily under the airline blanket. When I woke up, I cruised between soft white clouds, far away from everything firm, familiar, and familial until then. That was then. Being a young Indian woman and an immigrant in America, a country that was then so far removed from India by geography and connectivity, was almost like being Christopher Columbus. So the book then is about nostalgia. It is about being in a foreign country, one as a single young woman, then as a married person, then raising a family. At each point, the challenges are somewhat unique because you are an Indian identity person in a foreign country. You're trying to navigate cultures, you're trying to inculcate values in your children, which for the children seem very foreign because they're growing up not in India, but outside of it, right? So, all of those create in the author, that means it could be me or somebody else writing a story similar, create that tension. How much of me do I want to continue to express? How much am I ready to change? What does adaptation mean to me? Does it mean completely changing? Am I getting a complete cosmetic surgery or am I changing from inside? All these kind of complex questions become the central theme of the book. And therefore, what I've done is each story has different characters, different themes which are then experienced and investigated from an NRI lens. That's what the theme of the book says:
Yeah.
nostalgia and memory.
Okay, so you, as you told, like this book is a like whole collection of stories. So was there one story that it all started at all, or did it come together over time? Like it was starting from one story, or it came together.
So I'll have to say that, when, as I said, when I first went, I was a graduate student, so a young person. Uh, and so I must mention that this book it captures, there are two things that it captures most importantly. It is the time period which is unique, which is that all the 11 stories in the book are about a time period from 2000 to 2010. So that means the first decade of this century. You might ask what's particular about that? Well, there are two things that are particular for an NRI in America in particular. And those are number one, that this is a decade when there was no WhatsApp calling. Now, WhatsApp calling today seems like, oh, it's a given. We take it for granted. But imagine a person, an Indian person in America at a time when they don't have free calling at any time of the day available to them. As a graduate student, you anyhow go on a budget. You don't have too much money that you can have expensive long distance calls all the time. You are going far away. This is literally one of the farthest places you fly to from India is America. It's a 16-hour plus direct flight, right? So it is far away. You are far away from your whatever you knew as home and family. There's no family there, and you want to talk, but you can't call because calling cards were $5 a calling card, which you scratched to get a particular number, call it an OTP, but that itself gave you 15 minutes, right? So you called once a week. Can you imagine talking to your parent once a week when you have just gone to Mars for the first time, right? So it's that sense of isolation is extremely intense and palpable. So that is that time period. It is in that time period that these stories have been captured. That's number one. Number two, that this book also captures is post 9/11, which means 9/11 happened in 2001, and the remaining 9 years kind of capture what? They capture that for an American society, which was otherwise extremely friendly, very open to all kinds of immigrants, suddenly 9/11 happens, and everybody who looks Asian is now being looked at with some suspicion. There is a suspicious glance on brown skinned people. And that has something which makes us, as the people, being looked at very suspiciously. Now we interact, we navigate the space a little differently, right? So those kind of emotions are also captured in this book. So those are the two things. And therefore, the the stories, all of them are around that emotion.
Okay. So all of these stories must be very special to you. So do you have any favorite story from the book or one that stayed with you the longest and something you want to talk about? Any story?
Yes, so I'll start with, while each of these stories is like my own child, which means I love them equally. And going back to your earlier question, which was, when did I start writing about these stories? Was there a one time, one story started at all? So the answer is no, it wasn't one story. As I said, it was almost an internal analysis of whatever was happening outside me as a young person in America that kind of started the roots of the stories, which is I started writing in journals, right? So call it note taking. I was making notes of the kind of emotions that were going through me or people I knew. And I started making notes not with the intention necessarily of writing a book, but because writing for me forever, as a person who is fond of writing, writing for me has always been something that gives me solace. So when I was that person who was alone, feeling nostalgic and so on, writing always helped me. And so I wrote. And then during the pandemic, I realized that I had so much stuff collected. I had story formats written that I then sat down to collect them all together and write the stories. Now, coming back to, is there a favorite story? So, the title story you should be intrigued about is When She Married Dr. Patekar. This is a fictional biopic of a famous Bollywood diva who marries an NRI doctor around the same time that coincidentally I went to America, which is the turn of the century, 1999, right? And so this is again, as I said, this is a time when Bollywood and, there's no internet, there's no Instagram. There is internet, but not the social media, right? Which instantly connects all kind of popular icons with one. Like today, people anywhere in the world know Priyanka Chopra, they know K-pop, and so on. Back in the day, we were all siloed. Bollywood knew Bollywood, Hollywood knew Hollywood, right? So when you go to America, not everybody knows about Bollywood and so on. So here is a Bollywood diva, and I'm not going to name her, though I have personally met her and presented her my book. Um, Here is a Bollywood diva who comes to America married to a doctor who is technically a Mr. Nobody. He's not on any newspapers. He's just another very well educated doctor. And she is, I imagine, this is not something that I did out of research. I never researched on this person. I sat there imagining what must she be feeling. And she was going to a normal grocery store buying milk for her family. Nobody was looking at her. Paparazzi was not chasing her. Nobody wanted her autograph. Nobody wanted a picture with her because she was nobody for them, right? So the idea that fame is so contextual. A Priyanka Chopra, who is famous in India, will not necessarily be chased by paparazzi in America until she is known there, right? So fame is contextual. that fickleness of fame is what I captured in the story when she married Dr. Patekar. I imagined what her life was like and how did she reinvent herself there. That's what the title story is about. So I'll have to say uh, that was a favorite story of mine because it made me live the life of a person I've never been a Bollywood actress and so on, but I try to get into her shoes and imagine and write that. So that would be it.
Yeah, that's very interesting. And you said you collected these stories, the reflections of your life, and then you made like it a book, like in a collection of stories of. So when do you feel like when do you feel most like writing? And like, is there a
Mm.
particular time or mood that inspires you?
I wish there was, Sneha, and that would be fantastic because then I'd know I just have to do this and I'll start writing. But I am also a poet, and I think I love poetry and I love shairi, and I write a lot of, I'm bilingual. So I write in Hindi and in English. And I put it out on my social media. I conduct poetry salons in Hindi and English around themes. So that's something that comes very spontaneously to me, which means writing also has to be spontaneous. I see something and I almost feel like an urge, an itch, that if I didn't write that down somewhere, I wouldn't be able to. And once I've written it for 10 minutes, so something like this, right? So I have a diary like this always with me and I'm writing in it always, right? So if I've written in it for 10 minutes, the page kind of begins to grow into its own form and it kind of draws me in and then I write. So I wish I could say I wake up at 4 a.m., do a puja and start writing. I don't. But I try to tell myself to at least sit down to write nonstop 10 minutes every day and then see where it goes from there. So
Mm.
if I'm lucky on a day, I could have written for 1 hour nonstop, but I also have life and family and children. And if they intervene, then I write whenever I can. But I try to write as often as I can.
Yeah, I do the same. Sometimes, like when I feel like writing, I just write without thinking, and then
Yes,
something comes out of it eventually.
absolutely.
So
Yeah.
yeah. So reading your book, what do you hope readers take away after finishing your book? As
So,
you, yeah, as you like told your favorite stories, these are the collection of your stories. So what do you hope readers take away from the
So
book?
I'll say that I hope that first readers enjoy the stories. Like, there are different characters. There are a couple of things I'll tell you which are very nuanced in my book, for which, again, I hope the readers enjoy. One is that because, as I mentioned, I'm a bilingual writer, every story I've ended with a Hindustani sher or a kavita, if you can say, with an English translation. So, for example, for this story called When She Married Dr. Patekar, right? So I have a sher called, let me find it for you quickly and I'll read it. So that way, I hope that people enjoy that part of the story. For this one, I have Mehak is the person that I have, the Bollywood diva. And the story is the शेर is बिना प्रजा के राजा भी कहाँ राजा रहेगा तन्हा जजीरे में मुझे कौन राजा कहेगा as in jazira is island without subjects how can a king stay a king alone on an island who will call me a king, right? So point being that there is no king if there are no subjects, there is no celebrity if there is no paparazzi. Correct. So that's the kind of you know so my book has one, it has this bilingual feeling. I've used words in Hindi in it which a reader can see, and if they are curious, if they are a non-Hindi speaker and they are curious, they should go on Google to find out the meaning. Or if they are already Hindi speaking, they'll enjoy, like, oh, this is matka, I know what matka is, right? So in an English sentence the word matka comes and they should be excited about it, right? So there's another story that I have, and for it, I've written a sher called, which can again be a universal sher. तुम्हारी हकीकत मेरी भी हो ऐसा नहीं है जरूरी तुम्हारी हकीकत मेरी भी हो ऐसा नहीं है जरूरी हर हकीकत एक अधूरा नजरिया है हर हकीकत है अधूरी, right? So that's one that I hope people enjoy the story for the different characters. And number two that I've done is that because there are 11 stories, in each story, there is at least one character who has also appeared in another story. Okay. And the idea is that it's not a stories, these are not stories about families, but it is the idea that, you know, when you are a global desi in America, let's say, it is surprising that, out of the blue, you meet someone who knows someone who knows someone who knows you.
Yeah.
So you suddenly realize that it's a big wide world and yet it's a small world, right? So for example, I'm from Dehradun. It's not very common to find someone from Dehradun, and yet there are times when out of the blue I've met someone and they're like, oh, I'm from there, you're from Dehradun, and then we get talking about schools, and then we find like, okay, this person knows this person. So in a way, in this, the big world is a small place kind of a feeling is what I've tried to add to this book by artificially taking the stories such that in each story there is one character who's also appeared in another story. And they'll suddenly feel like, oh, I've heard of this person, Anu. They'll have this kind of a memory. Oh, the Anu has come in another story, right? But those are the artificial constructs. Now, in terms of themes, what do I want people to take? Major protagonists of my stories are women. So I do want women to take a sense of empowerment from these stories. These are not stories about women like, going into active marches and saying, give me rights. But these are stories of women who are in their lives. So, for example, a lot of these women are shadi.com wives, right? So these are women who got married on shadi.com, found their NRI husband, went there and realized. So these were well educated women. They went there and realized they are on a dependent visa. They cannot work. Right? Suddenly, there's a loss of a double identity. One, they are newly married. Two, they are in a foreign country. Three, they have no liberty to work if they wanted to work, despite the best of their degrees. How do they grapple with all of these scenarios? Not everybody says, you know what, this marriage is off and I'm walking away. No, they want to make things work. How do they deal with those situations? Some of my characters reflect that empowerment, right? There is a story which again is dear to my heart, which is almost like a Me Too movement, where a woman who's raising a child, uh, an NRI woman who's raising a child in America. So now she has an American child. The child was born there, or daughter. She's trying to consciously tell the child what the boundaries of her family are, what defines a family versus not. Why? Because back in India, when she was growing up, she had a dark experience with a family member, you know and so and all in the name of family. अरे ये तो family है चलो कोई नहीं. It's like अरे ये तो चाचा जी हैं मामा जी हैं whatever. And they were unkind to her. There was a dark secret to it which haunts her. So how does she navigate that? So these are stories about universal themes of longing, alienation, identity, nostalgia, but in different settings. So that's what I want my readers to take.
Yeah, that's very, very beautiful. And as you're writing, yes, as you're still writing, so can we expect more stories soon? Like, what are you working on?
So yes, I'm working on two projects right now. One is I write a lot of poetry. As sometimes my family jokes that, if somebody asks me for chai, I'll give them a poetry on chai instead of chai, right? So I write a lot of poetry and I scribble it on napkins in the aeroplane. I will scribble them on the back of a electricity bill and so on. So it's lying all over my house and my world. I'm in the project of compiling them into a coffee table book. So that's number one. And number two, I'm working on, so that would be bilingual. And the second thing that I'm working on is historical fiction, a novel based in real history. I'll just give you a peek preview, which is that it is a woman. The main protagonist is a woman set in a Mughal era. She is from the history, but she is a lesser known person, and I'm doing research on her. I am, as a matter of fact, this India trip was primarily created so that I could work on that research. I've done part of it already, and then I'll be traveling day after again to the place that I have identified. So that's a novel, and hopefully it should be out, if not this year, next year.
Okay, we all are looking forward to it. And thank you so much for sharing your thoughts, your stories, your journey with us. And it was great talking to you. And thank you, everyone. You all can grab your copies of When She Married Dr. Patekar right here in the English Book Depot. And these are the signed copies. Thank you,
Thank
everyone.
you. Thank you, Sneha, and thank you, EBD.
Thank you so much. Okay, okay, it's done.